Hey there, Emmanuel here from WebDevFuel and welcome back to this channel. Now, in today's video, you're going to learn exactly how you can deploy Next.js, a Next.js website to your own Ubuntu server. Now, what I mean by this is that by the end of this video, you'll be able to know exactly how to deploy your Next.js website without having to use Vercel as a hosting platform. Now, what are the reasons that you might want to do this? One of them is because you'll have more freedom and more control over where you host your website. If you ever want to move away from Vercel to another platform, you'll have to start everything from scratch and learn exactly how they do things their way and how you can implement them in your own way. Now, if instead of this, you start by deploying your website to, let's say, the DigitalOcean, Linode, Google Cloud Platform, or AWS, then you have the freedom to move around from different. So you can basically move from one hosting platform to another without having to worry about the compatibility between them. And the second one is that Vercel, in my opinion, is a bit expensive for my use case. So if you're, for example, a freelancer, if you have your own business, or if you want to just publish your own website and you don't want to do it as a hobby, they actually don't allow you to use their free plan, and you have to pay $20 per month per team member, and that's a bit more expensive than I would expect it to be. So that's why I'm teaching you in this video exactly step by step how you can deploy your Next.js website to your own server. So with that in mind, let's get started. So I'm going to start here by sharing my screen. And in this video, I'm going to be using DigitalOcean because it is one of the most um, it is one of the cheapest ones around, and you can also use Linode because that's also very, very cheap. You can start with a $5 server, but in this case, I'm going to be using a $12 one. So let's go ahead and start by sharing the screen. And now I want to show this right over here. So let's get started. As you can see, we are here now in DigitalOcean. And if you go here to create and you click on droplets, you're going to be able to create your own cloud server, which DigitalOcean calls droplets, Linode calls Linode. So whatever platform you're using, this process is more or less the same. Now, as I've said, you want to be using Ubuntu as your platform, as your Linux distribution, because this is the one that most people use, and it is one of the most stable ones that you can use. So as you can see, we're going to be choosing here the 20.04 LTS version, and this means that it is a long-term support version, and it is more stable. It doesn't have the latest packages, but it is a lot more stable than the latest ones. And you can, as you can see here, we can also choose here between the shared CPU and the dedicated CPU, but because we're going to simply use this as the demo, and if you don't have a lot of traffic, this would also be the case for you. You can simply go ahead and either pick here the regular ones at $5 or 10, but in my case, I'm going to pick here the premium AMD processors, and with it NVM SSD. So with that in mind, I'm going to pick here the $12 a month one. And then you need to go ahead and pick the data center region. Now, because I'm in the EU and I don't want to transfer data outside the EU, or actually I want to transfer as less data as possible outside of the EU because of GDPR, I'm going to simply pick here Frankfurt. And this is also the one that's closest to me. So this is going to be a lot faster for me to connect via SSH. Now, the data center region that you're going to pick is going to be based on the place where your visitors are going to be essentially visiting your site from. So if you have a lot of customers, let's say in the US, you probably want to pick either here the New York or San Francisco. If you have a lot of customers, let's say in Europe, you want to pick one of these, so London, Netherlands, or Frankfurt, and so on and so on. But again, for this use case, I'm going to simply pick Frankfurt because it is the closest to my location. The next thing that you want to do is you want to set up the authentication, and you can either go ahead and create here a root password that you can then access, use to access your server, or you can also go ahead and simply use the SSH keys in order to access this. Now, if you don't know exactly what SSH is and how you can set it up on your computer, just let me know in the comments below, because I can do a video in the future explaining you step by step exactly how you can do this. So now moving on, as you can see, we're simply going to go ahead and create here a droplet. The name, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to leave it as is, and we can start by creating here the droplet. All right, so as you can see now, this droplet was added to this project, which in this case is emmanueltourist.com, and I'm going to just wait a little bit for this to get provisioned, to boot up, and to start, to essentially for us to be able to connect it via SSH. So just a second until this actually gets done and all of this is ready. We just have to wait a little bit more. Okay, and now it is provisioned. So as you can see, we have here this IP address, and this is the IP address that we're going to be using in order to connect to our server. So I'm going to simply copy this address here, and now I need to go ahead and share my terminal with you. So for that, I'm just going to come here, go ahead and share my terminal. And now you should be able to see the terminal. All right, so let's go ahead here inside the terminal, and we need to SSH as the root user since we don't have yet another user besides the root. And then we want to paste in here the IP address. Now this is going to ask you if you want to trust this source, and we simply need to type yes and then press enter. And as you can see now, we are inside the server. So just a few seconds ago, I was managing my own personal computer. So I was running on localhost on this laptop that I'm using at the moment. But now I've SSH into the server, and now I have access to the server. So if I ask here, Linux, who am I? As you can see, I'm root, and I'm not actually using the computer that I was using before. So this means that we now have access to our server. Now I'm going to just take a second here to look at my notes, because we now can start by setting up the Ubuntu server. So the first step is to actually set up the Ubuntu server and to start creating a username instead of accessing it via the root user. Now, the reason we are doing this is, first of all, for safety reasons, and second of all, because in Linux, it is a lot easier for us to actually use a user and then use the sudo command instead of always having to use the root user, which is very, very insecure for a lot of different reasons. Now, the first step that you want to do is you want to create your user. And in this case, my user is going to be called Emmanuel. And as you can see, it says here that it is adding the user, adding the groups, all that good stuff. And you need to now go ahead and type the password. And I'm going to try and not get it wrong. And now, as you can see here, they ask us if this information is correct. Now, I didn't gone ahead and set up any full name, room number, work phone. We don't need any of that stuff. So you can just press enter until this message pops up. And now we can simply click enter, and our new user was created. Now, the next step that we need to take is we need to go ahead and give this user root access. So basically then via the sudo command, we can run commands as root, but without having to log in inside a server as root. Now, in order to do that, we need to type user mod A, and we need to press the flags A and capital G. And then we need to add it to the group sudo. And we also need to pass in here the user. So this is a command. These are the flags. This is the group that we want to add this user to, and this is the user that we want to add to the group. So with that in mind, go ahead and press enter, and now this newly created user already has sudo access to this server. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we also want to give SSH access to this user, because when we set up just a second ago on DigitalOcean the SSH keys, we've only gone ahead and set them up for the root user, not for this newly created user. And each time that we create a new user, that SSH key is not going to be translated or copied automatically to the new user. We need to actually add that manually. So with that in mind, we need to first of all go ahead and create a inside our home folder. We need to create a .ssh folder, and be careful because this needs to be a hidden folder. So because of that is .ssh and not just ssh. So in my case, I'm going to create here the folder inside home, Emmanuel, and then .ssh. Now, the next step is for us to copy the authorized keys into this newly created folder. So essentially, when we created the DigitalOcean server, what happened, and I'm just going to show it here really quickly, is essentially created here this authorized keys file, and I'm not going to open it because it has my key. It wouldn't really expose me to any potential damage, but just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and not open the file. So let's go ahead and just, instead of getting this file, I'm going to simply copy this file, and I'm going to paste it inside our newly created folder. So let's go ahead and simply type in here authorized keys. So again, we're going to copy this file inside of this folder. Now, the next thing that we want to do is, since we did all of these commands using the root user, all of these files that we just created, so let's just go ahead and cd here into this folder. And as you can see, not only the folder, so here, but also this file are owned by root, and we want them to be owned by our newly created user, which is Emmanuel. So in this case, I'm going to simply type here ch own. You want to also pass the flag of R, so that this is recursive, so it looks for all the files inside this folder and also applies this to all of those files and folders inside that folder. And we want to make sure that this is now owned by our user. So let's go ahead and simply do this. And this is now essentially made our newly created user the owner of this folder. So again, if we go ahead and we simply type this in here, as you can see now, it is Emmanuel, which is the owner of this file. And just a few seconds ago, it was root. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we also want to set up all of the permissions of this file. Now, the folder, the .ssh folder, and also the authorized keys file need to have specific permissions to avoid that file from being tampered with and from other users messing around with it. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and type this chmod, and then we want to pass here the number 700. And when we want to do this for this folder. Now, what this means is that we're going to be able to essentially read, write, and execute this folder, but only this user, which means that all other users, if we create in the future inside of this server, are not going to be allowed to tamper with our .ssh folder. And now we want to do the exact same thing, but for the authorized keys. So as you can see here, the authorized keys here has at this moment all of these permissions, and we want to go ahead and type chmod again, but now we want to do it with 600, which basically means that our newly created user is going to have only read and write permissions. So let's go ahead and type this in here and do this for the authorized keys. Now, in this case, actually, this became the exact same thing, but that's okay. Just to be safe, we can go ahead and do this in order to make sure that the permissions for this file are correct. All right, so now the next step is for us to allow the SSH port, the firewall, to flow through the SSH port. So what I mean by this is we need to enable the firewall, first of all, to make sure that no that hackers and other bad actors are not trying to access our server via other ports. And then we want to open the open SSH port, which is the port 22. So in order to do that, we need to first of all allow here using the UFW package. So I think this stands for uncomplicated firewall, and it is a package that comes by default with Ubuntu. And then you simply want to type in here allow and then open SSH exactly like I wrote it here. So the O has to be capital and then SSH also capital letters, and then all of them are normal. All of the others are normal. So we can go ahead and type in here UFW allow open SSH, and as you can see right now, the rules have been updated, and now we can go ahead and enable our firewall. Now, the reason we are doing this and not the other way around is because if we went ahead and first of all enabled the SSH and only after the firewall and only after that allowed the SSH ports to be connected through, then we would risk losing access to our server because at the moment we are connected via SSH. Now, this is basically everything that we need to do for the moment in order to be able to access the server with all our newly created user. So if you go ahead now, we exit the server. As you can see, we've just logged out of the server. And if I replace this with Emmanuel, we should be able to connect to it instead of with the root user. We are now connected to it with the Emmanuel user. Now we still have a couple steps left to do in order to make sure that our server is secure. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we want to edit the following file. So we want to edit the file inside the ATC folder, then SSH folder, and then finally we need to edit the sshd underscore config. So essentially what we want to do inside of this file is we want to disable password access to our server so that we can only access it via SSH, which means that bad actors again and hackers are not going to be able to try multiple passwords until they find the one that we are using. And also we want to disable root password, root access to our server, because just like I've said, we want to be able to connect via this user to our server and then use the sudo command and disable completely the access of the root user via SSH to our server. So let's go ahead and edit this file. I'm using here vim, and you also need to pass again the sudo command in order to be able to edit this file, because this file is owned by the root user. So after you paste after you type your password, you just need to come down here, and you can use, in my case, I'm using vim because I use it all the time to edit files and to code, but you can use Nano or another type of terminal editor that you might prefer. So again, the first thing that we want to do is to disable here the root login. So as you can see, permit root login is now set as no. And then we also want to search here for password authentication. And in this case, it's already set to no. I'm not sure if DigitalOcean does it by default or if this is the default state of this file, but just to make sure, go ahead and also disable password authentication. So now go ahead and save this file. And now the next thing that we want to do is to simply restart using the systemctl command. So we want to restart SSH, and we also want to restart the SSHD service. So this essentially is a systemd service inside of Ubuntu, and we want to restart both of them, the SSH and the SSHD. So this is it. For now, this is all that we need to do in order to set up our Ubuntu server. So now we've gone ahead, we've created a user, we've given sudo access to the user, we've copied the SSH keys in order to be able to access it, and we've disabled the root access and password access in order to be to make sure that this server is by default the most secure possible. Now we could have done a bunch of other different things, and if you want again to learn about how to do this stuff, let me know, because I'd love to make future videos about this. but this is everything that we need for now. So now the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and actually set up our website. So first of all, we need to go ahead and update and upgrade our system. And what this is going to essentially do is it is going to fetch all of the latest packages from the Ubuntu server, and then it is also going to upgrade our system with all of those packages. So if we click here, enter, as you can see, in this case, DigitalOcean adds a bunch of different mirrors, and also it goes ahead and also fetches from the ubuntu.com domain name. So this is just a detail about this, but it doesn't really matter. If you're using Linux, you're going to see something different here. In my case, I see this, but what you want to go ahead and do and is simply confirm this command. And now, as you can see, this is fetching all of the packages, and then this is going to upgrade our system with all of these packages. So again, we just need to wait a few seconds in order for this to be done. Okay, so this is it. Now we've gone ahead and updated our system with the latest packages and also upgraded our system to those latest packages. So we can now go ahead and set up everything around NGINX, pm2, and also install Yarn, npm, Node, all of those good things. So the first thing that we want to do is, since we've just upgraded our system, we can now go ahead and install NGINX, which is what we're going to be using to serve our website to the public. And then we also want to go ahead, and since we're here installing this, we want to go ahead and install certbot, which is going to allow us to generate a free SSL certificate. And finally, we want to go ahead and install this Python free certbot nginx, which is essentially a Python script that allows us to interact between certbot, let's encrypt, and nginx, and it is going to allow us to do things like redirect automatically, which is really, really cool. Now go ahead and type this command, and after we type this, we need to confirm again, and we simply need to wait a few seconds in order for this to be ready and for us to have installed certbot, the Python script to interact between nginx and also nginx. So with this done, we can now go ahead and actually create our folder that we're going to be using to host our files, our website, and then nginx is going to look inside that folder in order to serve that to our users. So first of all, let's go ahead and simply type in here sudo make dir. So we want to create a new directory inside var, then inside this folder right over here, www, and then we want to call this, let's call this, for example, demo website. So now we've gone ahead and created here a new folder inside of www, and we want to navigate there in order to do the following thing. Again, if we see here who owns this folder that we just created, it is the root user, and we want to change that again to our current user. So we want to type in here sudo chown and then make this recursive, and we want to do this to the demo-website folder that we just created. And now if we go ahead and see this again, as you can see now, our user, the current user that we are logged in as, is now the owner of this folder, which means that we can make changes inside the folder and make changes to our website without having to use either the command sudo or be logged in as root, which is really, really great. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we need to go ahead and create the initial nginx config file, and I'm going to leave in the description below the link for you to copy, but in my case, I'm just going to go ahead in here and just look here for a piece of code that I've created previously. So I just need to find that out where I put that. Okay, so it's here. And now we need to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and copy this code, and you'll be able to see it in just a second. And now we want to go ahead and create inside here the ATC folder, and then we need to navigate to the nginx folder, sites available. So essentially how nginx works is we have two different folders. We have the sites available folder, which is where we're going to add all the configurations, all the different NGINX configurations for the sites available, and then we need to create a symbolic link, so which is basically think of it as a shortcut. So between both of these files when we want to activate our website. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to call this file also demo website, and then we can go ahead and create this file, and I'm going to paste this code in here. So as you can see, we have here the server block. We're going to listen on port 80, and then we're going to define in here our domain name. Now, in this case, I'm not going to use www and a normal domain name. I'm simply going to use a subdomain. So for this use case, I'm going to write in here demo.webdevfuel.com, and then I'm going to go over exactly what all of these things do. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about here the gzip, which is essentially allows us to compress our static files, which is really great not only for speed, but also for ranking higher on Google and other SEO platforms. So if you go ahead and you use something like page speed insights in order to check exactly what's not great about your page speed and what Google doesn't like about your website in terms of SEO, you'll see that if you don't compress your files, your static files, they're not really happy about that, and they should be, because you need to compress them in order to make sure that your website is as fast as possible. So in order to do that, we need to go ahead and simply enable here the gzip. So we need to pass gzip on. Then we need to make sure that all of the proxy requests have gzip enabled, because as you'll see in just a second, we are using a proxy server in order to essentially activate our website. So we're going to use pm2 in order to run our website as a background service. And then this is going to essentially proxy our website into the internet. Then we need to set up in here all of these types, which is first of all application JavaScript, then x-JavaScript, CSS, and also text JavaScript. So this is going to make sure that all of our JavaScript files and CSS files are all compressed. Next, we want to make sure that the compression level is 6, and this is a value between 1 and 9, and I'm going to leave it as 6 because it is what most people use. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not really sure what the perfect value would be, but you can leave it at 6 or try different values and see exactly how that affects your website speed. So what this means is that essentially each time that we want to compress our file, it is going to take processing power. And each time that we want to decompress our file, it is also going to take processing power. And we need to find the perfect balance between that processing power and between how much we need to compress this file in order to make sure that it is not sent over the wire with a large file size. So continuing, as you can see here, this is the buffers. I'm not really sure what this stands for, but on the NGINX website, they say that we need to add that in here. And then we want to make sure that we also define the minimum length of the file, so that we want to make sure essentially that we are not compressing files that are too small to compress, and that then again we would have to use processing power to compress really small files, and that wouldn't make a lot of sense. Now, the next thing that we want to look at here is this location block. And this location block, as you can see, it serves all of the requests that come here to _next and then static. Now, the reason that we are splitting here between this location, which is just the default path, and the next static path is because we want to make sure that NGINX serves static files in a different way from all other requests. So essentially, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we replace here with the folder of your website that we just created earlier. In my case, it's demo website, and then we want to pass in here the hidden folder, so .next, and then static. So this essentially means that each time that NGINX receives a request to this path, it is going to alias into this folder and send all of this data over to the person that's requesting our website. We also want to make sure that this expires only after 365 days, because these are static files. They are usually not changed a lot over time. And also Next.js adds a timestamp to each one of them, which makes it really, really easy to make sure that each time that we change them, that the browser knows that it is a different file. And for that reason, we can go ahead and only add here. So we want to tell the browser that this file is going to be the same over one period, 1 year period time. And finally, we want to disable the access log because things like JavaScript, CSS, images, we don't really want to keep an access log off. And finally, we have here our location block. As you can see here, we have proxy paths, which means that we're going to grab our connection on localhost on the port 3000, which is going to be handled by Yarn, pm2, and Next.js. And then we want to reverse proxy this to our domain name over here. So demo.webdevfuel.com. And then here we want to set up the proxy HTTP version. Now, the reason we are adding here 1.1 and not 2 is because NGINX doesn't have HTTP 2 available for proxy. And then we want to also add in here all of these things, which are essentially for us to be able to handle our WebSocket connections. Now, Next.js uses WebSocket connections for a lot of the features that they provide. And for that reason, you need to add these 4 lines in here in order to make sure that NGINX can upgrade this connection to a WebSocket connection when connecting to our website. So again, this is everything that we need at the moment to make sure that our website is working. Now we need to go ahead and add our symbolic link between this file in here inside of the sites available, and we need to create a symbolic link inside of the sites enabled. So what that basically means is that we're going to add a shortcut to tell NGINX that this site should now be available. And actually, before we do that, let's just go ahead and remove the default site here inside of this folder because we don't want any conflict with the port 80 that it is listening on. So after we do that, we can just simply go ahead and type sudo ln and then pass the flag of s. So we need to essentially create a symbolic link. And then we're going to create here between the available and the enable. So again, we're creating a shortcut between these both of these files actually. So now with this in mind, let's go ahead and simply do the following. We need to now point our A records essentially from our hosting provider, actually our domain register provider, to this to our newly created server. So we essentially want to point this to the IP address. So I'm going to simply go ahead and move back here to DigitalOcean, which I think just caused an error. So just give me a second. Yeah, that's because it was actually suspended. Okay, so now we can go ahead and move this here. And as I've just told you, we need to come in here and simply copy here this IP address of our server that we just created. And we need to go ahead and point our A record to this IP address. Now, I'm not going to show you exactly what I'm doing here, simply because I don't want to expose my information. I don't want to expose, in this case, my Cloudflare account. But I'm going to go ahead and try to explain to you exactly what I'm doing. And then I'm going to show you exactly how this works and how the final result is in order for you to understand exactly what's going on here. So just give me a second. All right. So now I'm going to go here to DNS checker. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by this. I'm going to go ahead and share with you here this tab. And I'm going to paste it in here. So now here's exactly what I mean by this. You essentially want to go either to Namecheap if you're using Namecheap, if you're using Cloudflare. So if you've added your DNS records and then you're using your name server records actually, and you're using Cloudflare as your DNS server, you want to go to Cloudflare. So whatever the service is that you're using, or if you're not really sure, just leave me a comment in the description below. I'll check it out and I'll help you. Um, I'll try to help you and give you instructions on your particular platform. But what I mean by this is that if we go ahead and type in here now, webdevfuel, demo.webdevfuel.com, and if you search here, as you can see, all of these, so essentially this is pointing to our IP address that we just connected to. So now this is done. This is essentially what we need in order to point our domain name, so in this case, demo.webdevfuel.com, to our website. And we can now continue with setting up our website. So I'm going to go back to the terminal. And also, just to make sure that you understand exactly what we did, I'm going to log out. And as you can see, we've logged out here of this IP address. And if I paste it in here, it is the same IP address that I've just added to the A record. Now, if you're using a subdomain, you want to add the subdomain.yourdomain.com. If not, you want to simply add either an @ symbol, so it depends again on the service that you're using, or you want to simply type in the domain.com that you've purchased, and then you can start pointing your website to this server. I'm going to go ahead and SSH again into the server. And now we want to go ahead and simply restart NGINX to make sure that the configuration that we've just created in here is now published. So again, each time that we need to make some changes to NGINX, we need to go ahead and using the system control here command, we need to always restart NGINX to make sure that it is fetching the latest configuration from our server. So now the next thing that we want to do is we need to go ahead and actually cd into our folder. And then we want to go ahead and clone our website. And I'm going to just go here and copy this thing right over here. And I've actually just realized something. I need to go ahead and first of all remove this folder. So I'm going to use this command. Now, if this is not your case, if you're using, for example, GitHub using SSH, I'm simply going to clone a GitHub repository. So that's why I actually need to go ahead and delete this. And I'm going simply going to git clone. All right, so I've just cloned this folder in here. I'm going to rename it again to demo website, since this is the website, the folder name of our website that we created. And now I'm going to do again the exact same process. And I apologize, I understand this is a bit more confusing than it has to be, but I'm going to again simply chown or, and then we want to pass in here our user and then the folder name. So now here's exactly what I just did. I've just gone ahead, I've cloned the website into this folder, and I've also gone ahead and done the exact same process that we did before in order to make sure that our newly created user, so the user that is now logged in, is the current owner of this folder, in order to make sure that we can make changes to it. So now if we go ahead and we see exactly what the contents of this folder are, as you can see, it is just a boilerplate Next.js template with TypeScript. So this is nothing that complicated. I've just gone ahead, I've created a new Next.js project using TypeScript, and I've simply cloned this, which is a public repository that I've created. So now the next thing that we need to go ahead and do is we need to actually allow our firewall to receive connections via the 80 port and the 443 port, which are essentially the ports that we need to be able to connect without an SSL certificate and with an SSL certificate. Now, the reason we are actually allowing our firewall to receive connections via both of these ports is because we want to also be able to redirect from HTTP to HTTPS. And in order to make that happen, we need to allow both of them. So you simply need to type in here sudo ufw allow and then nginx full, and you need to add them here between quotes. So go ahead and type this, and now if we go ahead and we see the status of uncomplicated firewall, you can see here that nginx full is now it now allows nginx, and what this basically means full, it basically means again just like I said, it allows you traffic to flow through http and https. Okay, so now the next step is for us to set up our website. So we essentially need to install Node and npm. We need to also install yarn because I prefer to use it usually. And then finally, we need to go in ahead and install pm2, which is the package that we're going to be using in order to run a node process as a background process in order to avoid having to manually look for the process, kill the process, and then do all of this complicated stuff. Instead of this, we can just use pm2. Then later we can simply rebuild our project each time that we make a change to it, and then just simply restart our pm2 process. And that makes it very, very easy for us to be able to manage our website. So now I'm going to go ahead and share with you here this tab, so you can see here exactly what I'm doing. And as I've just said here, we're going to be using Node Version Manager in order to be able to install Node, npm, and all other Node packages that we might need to be using in our system in the future. So simply go ahead and paste here, copy here this command. And I'm going to show you again here my terminal. And then we can navigate back to the terminal and paste this code in here. And now, as you can see, if we execute our shell in order to make sure that all of the changes are published and we can access nvm, we can simply go ahead and type in here nvm install dash dash lts. And what this means is that we're going to be installing the latest stable version of Node. So again, just like with Ubuntu, we are not really looking for the latest and coolest features, but rather for stability. So simply go ahead and type this in here. And now, as you can see, it is fetching the latest Node version. And now we are able to use npm. So if we type here this, as you can see, it says that we can install, test, remove, do all of that good stuff. So what we want to install now again is we want to install globally yarn, and we also want to install pm2. And after a few seconds, this is going to install, and then we can go ahead and go to our folder and then start to building our project, start fetching our dependencies, and start actually getting closer to getting our website live. So with yarn installed and with pm2 installed, we can navigate back to our demo website folder, and we can simply go ahead and type in here yarn, so that all of the packages are fetched, and then they are installed inside of this project. So it is going to be fetching all of the packages that you're using on your Next.js project, and it is going to allow us to use them inside of this project. So we just need to wait a couple of seconds for this to be ready. And now we are almost over. The next step is simply to build our project. Now, if you're not really that familiar with Next.js, you're probably not aware of this entire process. If you want me to do a separate video, because the point of this video is to simply teach you how to deploy it. If you're not sure what build means, what yarn is, even just let me know again in the comments below. I can do a video in the future and teach you all of that good stuff. But with that in mind, simply go ahead and type here yarn and build. And then this is going to be fetching, this is actually going to be building our website from scratch. And it is going to essentially grab our code, either if it is on TypeScript or ECMA. So it is going to transpile our code into code that we can actually use on our website, instead of just having a development server running our website. And as you can see here, it simply exported here a bunch of chunks. So it essentially means that this exported our JavaScript files into into static files that we can use to serve our website. And this means that we are now ready to start actually serving our website. So the last command that we need in order to make sure that all of this is working is the following command. So we need to type in pm2 and then start, and then we need to tell pm2 exactly what we want to start. So we want to use the yarn command uh, as a command. So first of all, we need to add pm2 start, and this command right over here, and I'm trying to explain to you this way because this was also very confusing for me. This is the command that we're going to run. This is the pm2 command. So this is separate from this one. And then we also want to paste to type in here our name. So I'm going to call this one demo website. And finally, we want to tell now pm2 what we want to pass here to yarn. Now, since we've just built our project, we don't want to use the dev command, which is usually what we do when we are in development. In this case, we want to paste to type in here start. Now, again, this start is different from this one. This start tells pm2 that we want to start something, and then this start right over here tells yarn that we want to start this Next.js project. So with this in mind, simply go ahead and type this. And I've actually forgot to add something in here. Before here, the start, we need to add in here 2 dashes. So again, this is going to tell pm2 to start. Then we need to pass in here yarn. We need to give the name of our process. And then we need to add 2 dashes before this start right over here, because if we don't do this, as you can see, it is going to simply spit out an error. So now go ahead and do that. And this actually has gone ahead and created two. So I need to simply stop the demo website and see exactly what happened. And then I'm going to delete the demo website. And again, I apologize if I'm making a lot of mistakes, but actually this is how being a developer and using servers and doing things is. It isn't usually a very nice process. It is very complicated, but the point is that we need to look for errors, learn how to avoid them, and learn exactly how to correct them and the reason they are happening. Now again, let's go ahead and type this command in here. And this has just started our website. And now, if I'm not mistaken, if I go back to my browser in here, and I type in here the website, and now I can simply go in here and delete all of these things since I don't need them anymore. I'm going to now go ahead and share with you here our website. And this is it. As you can see, we now have our website live. And actually, let me just go ahead and show you my entire window and not just the screen, since I want you to also see that at the moment, this is not being served via SSL, so via HTTPS, but it is rather being served at the moment simply via HTTP. So I'm going to go ahead now and move this here. And now if we move back here, as you can see, we have here our demo.webdevfuel.com. And as it tells us here, it is at the moment not secure. And the final thing that we need to do is, because this is not at the moment being served via HTTPS, we need to go ahead and make that happen. So in order to do that, simply go ahead and type in your terminal sudo certbot. And again, we're using this package in order to generate automatically an SSL certificate, which is 100% free, and it is provided by the Let's Encrypt authority. And now we need to type in here the flag --NGINX, and this essentially tells certbot that we want to use this in conjunction with NGINX. And then we need to pass our domain. So we want to pass the flag D, and then we need to type in here web-fuel demo.webdevfuel.com. And again, you want to replace all of this stuff with the domain name of your website. So if I go ahead and paste this in here, I'm going to simply add in here a domain name, an email address actually. So let's just go over exactly what they are asking us here. So first of all, we need to add in here an email address, and I've gone ahead and added here hello@webdevfuel.com. You can add your Gmail address, whatever address that you usually use, because again, they are going to contact you for urgent renewal and security notices. So with that in mind, go ahead and do that. And now they are going to simply ask us to agree with their terms of service. And this second thing is if we want to receive, uh, let's say this is marketing email, so I'm going to simply decline this one. And now this is going to verify that our domain name is pointing to this IP address. And because we were able to just navigate to our website, that means that our IP address is already pointing to this server. So now this is gone ahead. This has done the verification. This has cleaned up the challenges. And now it is asking us if you want to redirect from HTTP to HTTPS. And of course, we want to, because we want to make sure that all our requests to our website are secure. So go ahead and type in here too, and then simply press enter. Now we can go back to here to our browser. And as you can see, if we go here back to this, as you can see, now our website is served. So this is everything that we need to do in order to deploy a Next.js website. Now, I understand that this is a bit more complicated and a lot more convoluted than using Vercel, but just like I said at the beginning of this video, this process allows you to publish now a bunch of different, let's say that you have, that you're a freelancer and that you have a bunch of clients and that you want to deliver websites to them. If you would be using Vercel, first of all, on the hobby plan, it is only for hobby project, and it would be against the terms and conditions to use that for other clients. And then I'm not really sure how it works because you have to pay $20 per month per user member, which is, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I prefer to just pay for the server usage that I have, and that's why I prefer to use DigitalOcean. And the cool part about this is that Next.js is open source. You can actually do this. It allows you to do this, and that's the idea behind open source, is for us to be able to do all of this stuff by ourselves. And the cool part also is that now if you would want to go ahead and add multiple websites to this server, the entire process of setting up the server from scratch, from doing all of the setup of Ubuntu and all of that stuff wouldn't necessarily need to happen twice for you to do that. And with a simple, let's say $20 a month server, or even the $5 a month, you can actually serve multiple websites if those websites don't have a lot of traffic, and if you're serving, let's say, local clients with your web development skills. So again, this video taught you exactly how to do this. If you have any questions, if you need help with anything, let me know in the comments below, and also subscribe to get notified of future videos.